Now, if you've been wondering why I haven't put up a video in about a week or so, or why I haven't been replying to any comments, well, it's because, as you might be able to hear in my voice, I've been extremely ill the last few days, to the point where I almost literally couldn't even get out of bed. And though I'm not trying to fish for sympathy here, because I am feeling much better now, one thing all that time has allowed me to do is to really start to think about what I want the future of this channel to be like. Because I know a lot of people have been disappointed or even upset by my videos regarding The Last Jedi and how negative they've been perceived to be, even though I dare say I've been pretty kind to the movie compared to others out there. And of course, many have told me they're unsubscribing or done with this channel because of this shift in my content. But, as I've said before in another video, my choices in regards to covering The Last Jedi were to either be as honest as I could be about this movie, from my point of view, which I have been, or I could have just praised this movie simply because it was Star Wars, and those who hated it would now be the ones telling me that they're unsubscribing. Or of course there was also a third option, the safe option if you will, which would have been me just leaving the topic alone more or less and making videos about other aspects of Star Wars, or to just dance around the controversy which, like it or not, is one of the big stories surrounding this movie. And if I'd done that, maybe I wouldn't have to worry about losing subscribers. But here's the thing. As much as I truly appreciate each and every person that subscribes to this channel, or just randomly watches my videos from time to time, I'm not here to pander to you. I'm not here to tell you what I think you want to hear so that you'll keep watching my videos. I'm here to talk Star Wars with you, the good and the bad. And as someone who loves this franchise and cares about its future, I think when a movie as divisive as The Last Jedi comes along, a discussion should be had amongst the fan base, and not just one where we sling insults at each other or just bash or praise the movie without even trying to listen to the other side. And I have tried to do that in my videos. I have tried to give some of my issues with this movie in a rational, well laid out manner, and at the same time, I've read and replied to those who love this movie and totally disagree with me, not to mention given them a place to share their thoughts with others who both love and hate this movie. Essentially, when I say let's talk some Star Wars at the end of my videos, I'm inviting anyone and everyone to do just that. I look at my videos as just the start of the discussion, not the last word in it. So if you're one of those people who have been unhappy about my recent videos, well, I'm not here to apologize for them. I'm here to let you know they come from a position of someone who is disappointed that he was disappointed by The Last Jedi and wants to understand what went wrong, why such a huge rift was created in the fan base by this movie. As I said a moment ago, I have heard from a lot of people who love The Last Jedi and who have written me something akin to full-on essays about why they think it was so great and try to explain to me that I'm missing something about it and need to watch it a few more times to fully grasp its immense depth and complexity. But perhaps the truest irony is the fact that others will try to defend this movie or respond to my criticisms by saying it's just a kids' movie and it's meant to be enjoyed and not overanalyzed or looked at too deeply. Which of course leads to the question, which is it, a cinematic masterpiece with profound depth, or a frivolous kids movie? You really can't use both of those defenses for it. Anyway, what I want to try and quickly do here is really explain what bothers me about this movie, and it's not what you probably think, because I'm sure most of you are under the impression that I disliked it because of what it did to the character of Luke Skywalker, but that's not it. Because even if Luke was more like what I think a lot of people wanted him or expected him to be like in this movie, this story still had way too many flaws in my opinion. Keywords there being my opinion, and not one you have to share or agree with. And the real problem for me is, Boba Fett is smarter than the entire First Order. And you're probably wondering, what does that even mean? Well, I know I probably don't have to remind you of this scene from The Empire Strikes Back. I dare say it's the one that truly made us all begin to appreciate the character of Boba Fett. But after Han Solo, of course, attached the Millennium Falcon to the Star Destroyer Avenger, thus fooling the Empire into believing they had made the jump to hyperspace, Boba Fett, having seen something like this done before, is smart enough to realize the Falcon has not jumped away yet. And right before the Imperial fleet makes the jump, the Falcon detaches from the Avenger, floats with the garbage for a little bit, and begins then to make its way slowly towards Bespin. But Boba Fett doesn't immediately try to attack them. Instead, he figures out where they're going, relays that information to the Empire, and gets there first. Which really makes one wonder, why, in The Last Jedi, did the First Order not try and figure out where the small resistance fleet was heading? I mean, think about how strange this all is. The Resistance, not anticipating being tracked through hyperspace, which is thought to be impossible, and having limited fuel reserves, jumps into the middle of nowhere when escaping the First Order. But that's not exactly the case either, is it? They jumped just close enough to the planet Crate to be able to reach it with their sublight engines. Well, one of their ships was able to reach it, not the other two apparently. Why exactly would you do that? Why not just jump straight to Crate? And you might say, well, if they were somehow tracked, it wouldn't reveal their actual destination. But the problem with that is they still headed for Crate after being tracked, thus giving away their destination anyway, and they jumped close enough to Crate where any intelligent being, like Boba Fett for example, would have figured out there's only one place in the galaxy they could be headed with the amount of fuel they had at sublight speeds, which, in cosmic terms, is like moving at a snail's pace. In fact, they would have essentially been 3 moving arrows pointing directly at the planet the whole time, but no one ever figures this out. And I don't understand how General Hux, though they turned him into a buffoon for this movie, probably so you didn't question his utter incompetency, how he didn't immediately ask upon emerging from hyperspace, presumably in the middle of nowhere, where they are and what system this is. But the thing is, they weren't in the middle of nowhere. They had to be in the Crate system, or very, very close to it, if they were able to fly to a planet in said system in 18 hours at sublight speed, which, again, is ridiculously slow speed on the cosmic level. There also presumably should have been a sun visible the entire time during the space chase. You know, the one in the skies over Crate that is conveniently left out of every shot of the space chase to add to the illusion of hopelessness being cast upon the remaining resistance. Sadly though, the First Order weren't the only idiots during this, because apparently even Poe Dameron never thought to look out the window and notice that there was, or should have been, a sun out there indicating they were in a system or entering one. He spent all that time worrying, but never checked their course or heading. Same goes for anyone else in the Resistance. Even those helming the ship apparently didn't realize they were actually headed somewhere, or weren't allowed to divulge that information to the rest of the crew because it's better to run on just hope, I guess? And now, perhaps, you're beginning to understand why this story was so disappointing to me. The Resistance didn't win because they outsmarted or outfought the First Order, like the Rebellion used to. They just weren't quite as stupid as them, and it was only by a very small margin. And honestly, I only scratched the surface of how many holes can be poked into the slow space chase of this movie. And I know some of you will want to counter by saying, well, astrophysics and Star Wars have never really gotten along before anyway, and that no Star Wars movie could ever begin to hope to get the Stephen Hawking seal of approval as to how space really works. But there is such a blatant disregard for it in this particular movie that it's hard to watch. It really is, from someone who at least has a layman's understanding of how space works. And the problem I see with this movie is Rian Johnson was so hell-bent on telling a very specific story that he didn't care how unrealistic he made some aspects of it, which is saying something considering, again, this is Star Wars and it doesn't have to be ultra-realistic. Another thing he often did was just utterly destroy characters to drive his story, and to have them act in a way that completely betrays how they'd been established, simply to get to certain plot points, or to have characters be in the right place at the right time. In other words, he likely envisioned how this movie was going to end, where each character would be and how their fate would be decided, and then worked backwards to try and get them all there, even if it didn't make any sense. And, as someone who enjoys to tell a story, I can understand and relate to him on some level. I'm not saying I'm the best storyteller, but there have been times in my fan fictions where I'm hell-bent on the story going a certain way. But as I'm telling it, I realize there's no logical way to get the characters where I need them to be. And instead of forcing the story in that direction and making it feel contrived, I let go and let the characters lead the way instead. And what comes is usually better than what I had planned. I get the sense Rian Johnson just could not bring himself to do that he wouldn't let go of his ideas for this movie and went with them and hoped people wouldn't see how contrived much of the story was. And, as silly as it sounds, for just a moment, imagine it was Boba Fett instead of Hux that was in command of the First Order during The Last Jedi. Well, first of all, I don't think that mom joke would have gone over well with him. You know, the one Poe played on Hux at the start. considering poor Boba Fett didn't even have a mother. Then again, Boba Fett would have likely just told his whole fleet to open fire on Poe before he even got the chance to tell it. I dare say Boba Fett would have also found numerous other ways to deal with the Resistance fleet during the slow space chase, not the least of which would have been to discern their destination and get there first. But there's the problem with this movie. If you make the First Order competent, the Resistance would have been crushed. It's as simple as that. Rian Johnson couldn't find a way to make the First Order a real, genuine threat, not in a way that fit into the story he so desperately wanted to tell, so he simply made them a joke. But the problem is, this wasn't just a one-off movie. The First Order will, or should be, still a threat in Episode 9. Hell, they were supposed to be the new Empire, essentially, the new overarching bad guys. But it's going to be hard to take them seriously after the incredible level of incompetency shown in this movie. And that's because they were just something else, another tool for Rian Johnson to use and sacrifice for the sake of telling his story. But this isn't his story at all. This is Star Wars. He was playing in a sandbox created by George Lucas, but didn't want to seem to respect that fact, and instead went about knocking everything else down to build his own thing. That was supposed to be Chapter 8 of 9 of a saga, but instead it comes off as Rian Johnson's way of trying to make a statement, and failing in my opinion. And that, in a nutshell, is why I didn't enjoy this movie. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. And if you made it to the end, you get my gratitude for listening to my awful voice for the whole video. Anyway, now it's your turn to tell me what you think. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.